In today's pretty complex business world, how do organizations really know if they're succeeding? It's definitely more than just tracking numbers, isn't it? It's about understanding the very pulse of the business, its strategic response. Today, we're getting into performance measurement. We're aiming to crack the code, really. We'll unpack why it's so vital, look at the best ways to measure, and crucially, reveal some unexpected pitfalls and how to navigate them. You brought us a great stack of sources, and our mission here is to pull out the most important nuggets, giving you a shortcut to being well-informed. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're talking about something really fundamental for any organization. Performance measurement. It sounds straightforward, maybe, but it's actually an ongoing issue, something that demands continuous attention from management. What's really at the heart of this challenge?
Well, what's fascinating looking at the sources is that they really emphasize 4 core areas management has to consider. First, how performance links up with the overall strategy. That's key. Second, how you actually set standards and targets effectively. Third, how you connect rewards to that performance. That's always a big one. And finally, taking a careful look at the benefits, but also the potential problems of performance measures themselves. It's a very holistic view they take.
Okay, so let's start with that first critical piece then. Linking performance directly to strategy. What does that actually mean for the measures an organization chooses?
Yeah, this is vital. The measures chosen, they must target areas where success is absolutely critical to the business. You can't just measure everything, and they need to be comprehensive. So measuring the effectiveness of all processes, right through to the final customer, and also measuring efficiency, how resources are actually being used.
So it's not just about what you sell, but how you sell it and how you use your resources in the process. And I see here, it's not just about hard numbers, right? It's more nuanced than that.
Exactly. The sources are really clear on this. You need an appropriate mix of both quantitative and qualitative methods. Numbers alone don't tell the whole story. Plus, you got to balance that focus on the long-term vision with getting those short-term wins. That's always a balancing act. And it also means the systems themselves, the measurement systems, they have to be dynamic, flexible. They need to adapt to a changing environment to stay relevant.
That makes sense. You definitely need to be agile. Things change so fast. Now, the sources mention that traditional financial measures, things like profitability or cash flow, they often fell short. They weren't given the full picture. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Tell us about some of the models that stepped up to meet this challenge. What came next?
Right. That raises the key question. If those traditional financial measures weren't enough, what replaced them? Or what supplemented them? Well, Lynch and Cross, back in 1991, proposed their performance pyramid model. It was quite innovative. They argued that organizations needed measures that went, far beyond just the financial. They said you need to focus on the business operating systems and the strategic driving forces of the organization.
Okay, driving forces. And what are those driving forces they identified? What did they focus on?
Lynch and Cross proposed focusing on customer satisfaction, flexibility, and productivity. Those were the big 3. And the pyramid itself, the model, it's designed to link the overall business strategy right down to day-to-day operations. It does this by monitoring those driving forces: satisfaction, flexibility, productivity, using indicators like waste, delivery times, quality, cycle time, things derived from the lower departmental levels.
So it's a multi-level approach then, like a pyramid, just as the name suggests, where each layer supports the next one up.
Precisely. The sources explain it has 4 levels, and they interact both horizontally and vertically. It's quite integrated. George Brown, writing a bit later in 1998, he clarified this idea of getting it done in the middle. Okay. This is about those business operating systems that cut across different departmental boundaries. Think about, say, introducing a new product. That involves design, R&D, marketing, sales, multiple departments. And at this middle level, the focus is squarely on those key drivers: customer satisfaction, flexibility, and productivity.
Okay, got it. And what's happening right at the bottom?
Yeah.
In the trenches, as they put it. What are the measures there?
Yeah, down there, the objective is really operational. It's about enhancing quality, improving delivery performance, reducing cycle time, cutting waste. And importantly, it uses mostly non-financial indicators at that level, things you can measure on the shop floor or in the service center. The real strength of this whole model is how it ties together that hierarchical performance measurement, top to bottom, with a business process review, how things actually get done. And it makes a very clear distinction between measures for external parties like customer satisfaction, overall quality, delivery promises, and the internal ones like productivity, cycle time, waste reduction.
Right. Different audiences need different information. So what does this all mean for actually designing a system? What are the key takeaways?
Well, Lynch and Cross concluded that a good system, it has to do several specific things. It's got to link operations clearly to strategic goals. That's number one. It has to use both financial and non-financial information that's actually valuable to managers, not just data for data's sake. It needs to provide the correct information for decision-making at all levels, from the top floor to the shop floor. And ultimately, fundamentally, it has to focus all business activities on what the customer actually requires. That's the end goal. This makes it a really powerful modeling tool.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there other maybe similar frameworks out there that share this kind of philosophy, building on these ideas?
Oh, absolutely. David Altley, writing in 2005, he observes several related frameworks. Probably the most famous is the Balanced Scorecard by Kaplan and Norton. There's also Neely and colleagues' Performance Prism. The common thread, really, in all these more modern approaches is that performance measures absolutely should link to corporate strategy. That's non-negotiable. They should include both external and internal measures, look both outwards and inwards. They need to use non-financial as well as financial data, get that broader picture. They should explicitly address the trade-offs, between different performance dimensions. You often can't maximize everything at once. They need to include all the important factors, even if some are hard to measure. Don't just measure the easy stuff. And critically, they have to carefully consider how these measures actually motivate managers and employees, the human element.
It's definitely clear that getting the measures right is key. But okay, once you have them, how do you set the bar? How do you define what good performance actually looks like?
Right, defining good. Management has a couple of main tools here, according to the sources. Benchmarking is one, target costing is another. Benchmarking, as Spendolini defined it back in '91, is a continuous systematic process, basically for evaluating your products, services, processes against organizations recognized as representing best practices. It often involves comparing yourself to a best practice firm, and sometimes that firm might even be in a completely different industry. The goal is to gain insights and really stimulate innovation.
That's smart learning from the best, wherever they are. And what about the other one, target costing? How's that work?
Target costing. Yeah, it's quite central to strategic profit management. It kind of flips the usual process. It starts by determining a selling price that the market will accept, one that will capture the desired market share. Then you subtract the firm's required profit margin from that price. What's left is the target cost. That's the cost you must achieve to hit your profit goals at that market price. So it's about figuring out what a product should cost based on the market, and then working relentlessly to close any gap between your current costs and that target.
Okay, so you've set the targets using benchmarking or target costing. How do you then motivate people to actually hit them? The sources emphasize linking rewards to performance pretty strongly.
Oh, absolutely critical. Management has to establish an appropriate link between performance and rewards. You need to incentivize the behavior you want, and that involves using both financial rewards, things like salary increases, bonuses, maybe promotions, and also non-financial rewards, things like recognition, giving people a sense of achievement, more responsibility. Those can be powerful too. The sources even discuss negative rewards or, punishments for failure. That could be not getting potential rewards, or in more serious cases, demotions or even job loss.
Right. So what are the big benefits then of having a really well-designed reward scheme? What does it achieve?
Well, there are several key benefits. Rewards can definitely shape behavior, helping to implement strategy effectively. If you reward strategic actions, people will do them. They obviously incentivize good performance, which helps attract and retain valuable employees. Good people want to be rewarded for good work. They also emphasize key values, just by including certain performance indicators in the scheme. It creates what the sources call an understood environment where everyone knows what contributes to success. They can foster continuous improvement. And schemes that include equity or share ownership can encourage a more long-term focus on increasing the company's market value.
Okay, those are significant upsides. But designing these schemes must be tricky. What are the difficult parts? What does management need to wrestle with?
Ooh, it's very tricky. Management needs to consider, for instance, should targets be based on results or on effort? That's especially hard for, say, administrative staff where the output isn't always easy to measure. Then, should the rewards be monetary or non-monetary? Money means different things to different people, right? Some might prefer job security or maybe more flexible hours. Should reward promises be implicit or explicit? If they're explicit, it can tie management's hands. But implicit promises, like maybe a promotion down the line, might not be feasible for everyone. The size and the time span of the reward can be complex too. Think about seasonal businesses or industries with lots of surplus capacity. How do you design rewards fairly then? And finally, deciding between individual rewards versus group rewards, how to handle equity participation without creating perceived unfairness, and of course, the tax implications. All really key design considerations. It's a minefield.
Definitely sounds like it. We've talked about all the good things, the strategic importance, the models, the rewards, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows, is it? The sources warn quite a bit about potential problems. The dark side, maybe.
Indeed, they do. Barry, Broadbent, and Otley, writing in 1995, they outline the benefits we've discussed. Clarifying objectives, getting agreed measures, understanding processes, comparing, target setting, accountability, all good stuff. However, they also identified some significant pitfalls. And these often stem from a fundamental conflict between individual goals and organizational goals, where the measure drives behavior that helps the individual but hurts the company.
Okay, that raises a really important question. How can something that's actually designed to improve performance end up harming it? Where does it go wrong?
Well, the sources give a fantastic illustration of this, using a hypothetical firm of practicing accountants. It really brings these potential problems to life. Let's look at some of them. First, there's tunnel vision. This is where there's an undue focus, almost an obsession, with specific measures causing other critical areas to be neglected. So in that accounting firm example, if everyone's just focused on hitting a 72% staff utilization ratio, basically, chargeable hours, it might lead to really poor client documentation or neglecting communication and teamwork within the firm. You hit the number, but the quality suffers.
Right, like focusing only on speed but ignoring safety or quality. I get it.
Exactly. Then there's sub-optimisation. This happens when focusing too much on some objectives means others are missed, or even actively undermined. So imagine an audit partner who's obsessed only with winning new clients. Great for growth, perhaps. But if that focus means they then don't adequately supervise the work being done for their current clients, that's sub-optimization. You've damaged one area to boost another.
And that can lead to myopia, I guess. Short-sightedness. Focusing too much on the now.
Precisely. Myopia is short-sightedness, where long-term objectives get neglected because everyone's chasing short-term results tied to the measures. So, that undue focus on current client income, for example, might damage longer-term goals like investing in practice development, training staff, or innovating services. You sacrifice the future for today's numbers.
And I can see how that might feed into the next one. Measure fixation. Just focusing on the metric itself.
Yes, measure fixation is when behavior is driven purely by the specific performance indicators, even if those indicators aren't actually effective or the behavior they drive is counterproductive, like using overly junior staff just to cut costs and hit a cost metric. It might look good on that one measure, but it could easily result in costly rework, delays, and really unhappy clients down the line. The measure becomes the goal, regardless of the consequences.
That's worrying. What about when people start to manipulate the numbers?
Ah, yes. That brings us to misrepresentation. This is basically creative reporting, cooking the books, perhaps, but maybe more subtle, just making results look acceptable even when they aren't really. Think of that client survey reporting 95% satisfaction. Sounds great, but then maybe you find out only 20% of clients were surveyed, and they were carefully selected ones likely to give good feedback. It's misleading.
Okay. And then there's misinterpretation. This sounds like a more fundamental misunderstanding of the situation.
It is. Misinterpretation is failing to recognize the complexity of the environment you're operating in. In that accountancy practice example again, one partner might be focused purely on profit, another might prioritize landing high-profile clients for prestige, a third might focus on building the firm's local reputation. Their objectives don't always align perfectly, so interpreting overall performance can be difficult because everyone's looking at it through their own slightly different lens. Success for one might not look like success for another.
Right, and then the one that sounds really deliberate.
Yeah.
Gaming. This is actively playing the system, isn't it?
Absolutely. Gaming is the deliberate distortion of measures for strategic advantage, usually personal advantage. An audit manager might intentionally underperform towards the end of the year to make sure they get easier targets next year. That's called sandbagging. Or maybe they hold back reporting some lucrative consultancy work they've secured, saving it to boost next quarter's figures and create some slack. It's manipulating the measure, not improving performance.
Wow. And the last one, ossification. That sounds bad. Like things getting stuck.
Exactly. Ossification means things becoming rigid, bony. It's an unwillingness to change the performance measurement scheme once it's in place, even if it's clearly flawed or outdated. Maybe you're using a standard, rigid client questionnaire. It might yield good responses, but perhaps only because the questions are vague or poorly structured, not because clients are genuinely happy. But nobody wants to change the system because we've always done it this way. The system itself fossilizes.
Wow, those are some really significant traps, and quite subtle, some of them. So given all these potential problems, what does this all mean? How do organizations actually address these imperfections? How do they make sure measures are helping, not hurting?
Well, George Brown, back in 1998, again, he outlined several key actions to try and minimize these issues. The first, and maybe the most important, is to involve staff at all levels in actually developing and implementing the scheme. Get their buy-in. If everyone understands the measures, accepts them, feels some ownership, it really helps reduce the temptation for gaming or the likelihood of tunnel vision.
Right, that makes sense. Buy-in from the ground up changes everything.
Exactly. Second, management needs to be flexible in using the performance measures. Don't rely on them as the only means of control. Acknowledge that informal chats, observations, general collaboration, those things can also drive improvement. It's not all about the dashboard. This helps reduce that measure fixation and misrepresentation. Third, keep the system under constant review. Don't let it ossify. Regularly ask, is this still working? Is it driving the right behaviors? Are people gaming it? That vigilance helps overcome ossification in gaming.
Okay, involve people, be flexible, keep reviewing. What about the design of the measures themselves? Any tips there?
Yes. Critically, you need to try and quantify all objectives, even the difficult ones. Don't shy away just because it's hard to put a number on it initially. And crucially, maintain a laser focus on measuring customer satisfaction. That's the ultimate arbiter. Positive signals earlier in the value chain, better internal processes, faster cycle times. They're only really relevant if they actually contribute to making the customer happier or more satisfied at the end of the day. That focus helps reduce tunnel vision and sub-optimization.
So it's about making sure the data is as robust as possible. And the ultimate focus is clear: the customer.
Precisely. And fourth, Brown suggests considering auditing the system itself, not just the results. Get an expert, independent view on how the system is designed and working. An arm's-length interpretation can help identify likely problems or areas vulnerable to gaming, and of course maintain a careful audit of the actual data being used. That helps reduce measure fixation, misinterpretation, or gaming, because any scheme is only as good as the data going into it and how it's analyzed. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Absolutely. Are there any final sort of overarching principles or maybe a philosophy to keep in mind for making performance measurement work well?
Yeah, the sources highlight a few key features for any good scheme. First, it needs to nurture a long-term perspective among staff. This can be really difficult if the rewards are too focused on the short term, on this quarter's results. Second, limit the number of performance measures. Don't overwhelm people. It's better to focus on the vital few key events or metrics that genuinely drive customer satisfaction, rather than dissipating effort across dozens of KPIs or creating conflicts between them. Focus is key. And finally, develop performance benchmarks that are independent of your own past activity. Focus on improvement relative to best practice or future potential, not just beating last year's numbers. Look forward, not just back.
Okay, so bringing all this together, what does it all mean for you listening out there, trying to navigate this world of organizational performance? We've journeyed from why measurement is strategically necessary, looked at innovative models like the performance pyramid, explored setting standards and rewards, and maybe most importantly, uncovered the surprising, often hidden pitfalls like tunnel vision, gaming, myopia.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is that while performance measures are absolutely essential for success, they're definitely not a set and forget kind of solution. They require constant vigilance, really thoughtful design, and a deep understanding of human behavior, how people react to being measured and rewarded to truly align individual efforts with the organization's goals. It's really about leveraging data to build understanding, to build capability, not just to track numbers on a spreadsheet.
And our goal with this deep dive was to give you that shortcut, that comprehensive overview, so you're genuinely well-informed on this critical topic. You now have a much better handle on why it's important, what best practices look like, and crucially, what to watch out for. So here's a final thought to leave you with. If performance measures are meant to drive success, how do organizations truly ensure that the data they collect reflects reality? And not just a carefully curated narrative designed to look good, especially when significant rewards are tied to those numbers. It's a question worth continually asking, isn't it? Because the true picture of performance is often more nuanced, more complex than the numbers alone might suggest.